But yeah, let's kick things off by looking at what is on the front pages of this morning's papers. I've got Connor Tomlinson, political commentator at Young Voices UK, with me now. Let's look at the main story. The main headline is the Queen. Not so much to do with her Christmas message, which was incredible yesterday, I have to say.
It was very sad.
Really sad. You got a little insight into the Queen. She's not really so open, but yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. The main story, the main reason why the Queen's making the front pages this morning, an armed intruder, breaking into Windsor Castle as the Queen was preparing for Christmas celebrations.
Yeah, a guy tried to throw a rope ladder up over the wall about 8:30 a.m. They haven't confirmed exactly what the offensive weapon was he was carrying, but plenty of places are reporting a crossbow. So you've got to wonder what exactly his intentions were. I don't think it was to wish her a Merry Christmas, let's put it that way. I wonder if more of his motivation will be coming out very soon. There's been no terrorist plot confirmation being the driving force behind the attempted intrusion, but it does remind you a little bit of who was the fella that got into Buckingham Palace to complain about the Maggie Thatcher's tax things ages ago? They dramatise it in The Crown. Slightly more malicious version of that. Not
it's
the best
really worrying. How did he get that close as well?
Yeah.
Christmas Day?
It reminds me of the old story of there was a intruder that someone tackled one of the security guards on the White House lawn while Obama was in office, and they found out it was some massive 6-foot bloke off his head on something, and then one of the people guarding it was a girl who wasn't armed, and it's just like, is this the security detail? Is this the sort of provisions we're putting in place?
I thought the military would be involved.
Yes.
I thought the army. It was so weirdly enough, I actually saw the film Spencer, which looks at a couple of days over Christmas with Diana and the royal family, and they actually showed, I don't know if this is accurate, but they showed the military delivering the Christmas food to Sandringham. But yeah, I don't know how accurate that is, but you would think maybe you might have the military there.
Well, actually, I would say so. Week before last, my missus won the Princess Diana Award thing, and we went to Alfred House.
Is this in Northampton?
Yes, yeah. So they had the little marquee outside, really upmarket, but way beyond my pay grade. But the security there was some people, but it wasn't as high valued as you'd expect them to be, especially with Lord Spencer and all the dignitaries and that just walking around. So you would have thought it would have been a more secure of a venue.
Maybe they can have a bit of a rethink, because this is the kind of thing which should not be happening. Somebody getting this close, armed to the Queen. But yes. The other story making the front pages when they are talking about the Queen is, of course, her Christmas message speech. So personal. And you could argue more than ever, you felt like you could actually relate to Her Majesty. Yeah,
well, she's incredibly stoic, and she's been a sort of figurehead throughout all of Britain's numerous crises, particularly the Second World War. She's been a real bastion of British patriotism, and even someone like me who's got their objections to the monarchy as an institution, in the fact that very wasteful of money, not very meritocratic, allows people like Meghan and Harry to get a voice when they may not have all the brain cells there. Everyone goes, we love the Queen, right? And a lot of people love Prince Philip as well. He had his hilarious jokes that he told to the Reagans, etc. He's got his legacy with the Duke of Edinburgh Award, and you can tell that she really misses him I think the best thing we've ever
Christmas without him.
Well, the best thing we've ever seen with him and her was when there's a photo of her walking past him in the corridors, and where he's dressed up in the Beefeater outfit, and she just can't hide stifling her laughter. And that's the kind of relationship they had. Despite all the pomp and ceremony, there was a real lot of love there. And now to see that gone, I mean, obviously a lot of people when they're elderly, when their partners pass away, it's a massive shock to the system.
Oh, definitely.
You've spent your entire life crafting around that person, you've built your family around them, and you might well be surrounded by them. But obviously we remember Victoria and Prince Albert, when he died, she retreated to the Isle of Wight to just mourn for over a decade. So the fact that the Queen's got up and actually done this speech in the first place in their duty as monarch, it's very commendable. But you could really see that when she said, we've got an extra seat empty at the table this year, you can really feel for the woman.
Grief is so horrid, and it is something that can sometimes just stay with you until the end of days. But it's like you've literally lost a part of you, and you can really see that this is of course something that the Queen is going through. COVID. Also a story making the front pages this morning. In fact,
doesn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, well actually, you know what? It's not across the board, which is nice and refreshing over the Christmas period. However, it's the Telegraph, that's like Sunday Telegraph, saying there could be dodgy data being pushed in all of this? Heaven forbid.
I mean, that's not the first time, because if we all remember, the first lockdown, the peaks were going down right before we entered it. And then in the December lockdown last time, the modelling was a couple of weeks out of date in the slides that they were showing, and people were pointing this out, and they went, oh, well, we're locked down anyway, so there's no point even changing it. So the fact that they've now got, what was the woman's name at the top?
Harris?
Jenny Harris, yes.
Yeah,
she's been widely
executive
criticised throughout
agency.
because she keeps getting things
Agency.
wrong. She was saying, masks might actually increase transmission. Now, there's no doubt the masks particularly work all that well, and there's a lot of wastage, but it's not like they're actually actively increasing particle dispersal. She also said she had a few strange comments that people led to call for a resignation for. So now that we're deferring to her on the data behind Omicron and that, well, it's not exactly the excellent thing to predicate restrictions on anyway, is it?
So what part of the data is the Sunday Telegraph claiming to be dodgy?
I believe it was to do with Sajid Javid getting up and saying about the hospital admissions.
Yes, in London. Yes, of course. So here we go. So this is why. This was his reason for London declaring a major instance in London, because of such worries of the number of people going into hospitals and also hospital staff sicknesses. But those numbers could be wrong. Yes,
well, there was actually some data that was released fairly recently that most of the Omicron cases, if you're triple vaccinated, you've got 4 times more likely to be sequenced with Omicron, because Omicron is maybe vaccine evasive. Now that means obviously there's still Delta strains out there for people who aren't vaccinated, including myself. Exactly. And
wait, Connor, you're not vaccinated.
I'm not. No.
Okay, what's that? Okay, we'll talk about that in a moment. We'll talk about that in a moment. Keep talking.
And then there was also the revelation that quite a few people had been sequenced for Omicron about 8 days after they'd been admitted to hospital. Yes. So they've just clearly caught it in hospital, and that's not surprised when we've got transmission vectors like hospitals are the only places that stayed open during a lockdown. So the idea that it's going to run rampant and massively increase hospitalisation. Who was the person that modelled it the other day? It said up to 5 times higher hospitalisations than the Delta.
Dr. Neil Ferguson.
It might have been, because he's one of the main mongers of doomsday prophecies that never seem to pass. That just seems utterly ridiculous at this point.
So what do you make of then? I had a doctor on, Dr. Patel, a pharmacist, talking about more restrictions needed, despite the fact you have this major booster rollout, which of course you're not a part of, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But for him, as far as he's concerned, we still need more restrictions introduced.
Well, number one, I don't think there's any moral argument for it, because I don't think it's the government's job to tell you exactly how to live your life. If I need the government telling me who can and can't come into my home for Christmas, you're just treating me like a child at that point. And also, it's completely untenable in terms of the cancer diagnoses that have been missed, in terms of the children's mental health crisis. I believe it's 1 in 5 now that can have an actual diagnosable mental health condition, including lots of the children that we've seen in the recent cases with social service failings. About 200 extra deaths, and the COVID was used as a cover-up by some people.
Children deaths, you're saying? 200?
From neglect from abuse. Some of those cases about miss, and about the estimation, I believe, was in one of the papers. I can't remember exactly which one, but there's 200 extra cases, and some of the parents actually said, "Oh, we're isolating to avoid social services coming around and checking."
Schools,
so it's just a smokescreen. The amount of unintended social impacts that come from these restrictions is insane.
Okay, well, just can't confirm details of the number of children who've died. Whether it is that 200 figure, I'll check it out though, Connor. No vaccines. What's going on? Why?
Okay, so first of all, I have anaphylaxis, so I can't get any of the mRNA ones. But there is a very interesting thing that's happening with the booster that I'll get into in a minute. So I could have only had AstraZeneca, and then when I was thinking, I may or may not do, I caught COVID, was completely asymptomatic, and was completely fine. And I was like, okay, well, if I get worried about it, I'll do it. And then the booster program gets rolled out, and they start saying, you'll never be you'll never be fully vaccinated unless triple vaccinated. Okay, then what's the point if I'm never going to be? And then what they do is, this 15-minute wait period that they've gotten rid of, that was specifically for anaphylactic reactions. And it's not that the anaphylactic reactions have stopped, it's just that they're getting rid of that, rather than the supervision, just to get more boosters in time. So that's kind of concerning, in that, what, are they going to repeal my actual anaphylaxis exemption for the booster vaccines in future just because they think, you can chance it? That's kind of concerning to me.
And you were completely fine when you got COVID?
Yes,
You're a young man, of course.
Well, exactly. Fine. Well, this is my thing. I'm not one of the people that says, the vaccine's going to kill you overnight. Of course, there's been some side effects in some people. That's why not everyone needs to be vaccinated. It's not good for everyone, including me. However, if you're, put it crassly, old and fat, you may want to consider it, okay? Fair enough.
My God. Well, I have to say, okay, so are you not worried about getting a different variant of COVID? There's so many out there, actually. So my daughter got it this time last year. She tested positive for COVID, and then again in July. And the first time, literally, she was just, a couple of days runny nose, wasn't really that ill. I, however, was like sick for 4 weeks. However, when she got it in July, you're looking at about 2 weeks, and she was really, really ill. And she wasn't actually very keen. She's 17, right. And she wasn't keen on taking the vaccine. But after getting it and being that ill, she says she never wants to be that sick again. And so she's taken her first dose.
Well, the ways that viruses evolve, and I'm happy to be corrected on this, but as we've seen with Omicron, about, 6 weeks of data now from South Africa, it seems to be a more transmissible strain, but the actual symptoms of it are far weaker. And that makes sense because a virus doesn't want to kill its host. It wants it to stick around and inculcate and keep alive. So if it keeps weakening, it's going to become like most SARS viruses and turn into something like a common cold or a regular flu. And I haven't had particular issues with those just because I'm not that immunocompromised aside from anaphylaxis, and I used to have asthma when I was younger. I should be pretty much fine. But if I ever feel particularly concerned, sure, I'd more likely, obviously I couldn't take the mRNA ones, I'd more likely go out and get the AstraZeneca one. And that actually seems to be why Britain might be doing better than a lot of Europe, because that's a sort of conventional one, and it's one of the only ones that doesn't need a booster. So I wonder if that's our front line of protection over here.
I would have to say, of course, get some medical advice, speak to your doctor, speak to your GP, any issues you might have or worries or concerns you might have about the vaccine. Connor is staying with us. Good morning to you. We're just going through the stories making it this morning, and sadly we got the breaking news that the South Africa Archbishop Desmond Tutu, the Nobel Peace Prize laureate who helped, of course, end apartheid in South Africa, has died at the age of 90. Connor Tomlinson with me going through all of this. This is really, really sad news. He's such a huge figure.
Well, it's a pretty tragic loss for the sort of liberation theology sentiment. Funnily enough, I think Britain can actually claim a little bit of a part in his story, because he was educated at KCO and UCO, and it was one of the main places where he learned sort of rhetoric that he combined his Christianity with his deep aversion to discrimination. He actually compared apartheid in South Africa directly to the dual forces of Nazism and Soviet communism, and said both were as evil as each other. So he wasn't particularly a politically, ideologically partisan man. He just really wanted people to be free, and he transferred that beyond the battle for civil rights in South Africa, and he moved that onto things like issues of anti-discrimination against gay people, etc. So he fought all his life, and we can really commend him for being a strong force and leaving a lasting legacy of allowing people to live free of bigotry.
Absolutely huge role in that. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1984 for his role in that struggle to abolish apartheid in South Africa. The president there, Cyril Ramaphosa, said Desmond Tutu was an iconic spiritual leader, anti-apartheid activist and global human rights campaigner, patriot without equal, a leader of principle and pragmatism who gave meaning to the biblical insights that faith without works is dead. This is a tribute to Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who's died, confirmed this morning, at the age of 90. A really sad loss there.
I was just going to say, can we make sure that the South African government get a better sign language interpreter this time at his funeral than at Nelson Mandela's, if anyone remembers that particular story?
Yeah, that was just a debacle.
Shambolic.
Gosh, I could have done it and probably done a better job, even though I know no British Sign Language at all. Let's move on, looking at the front pages of this morning's papers, and talking about Chris Whitty now. Sir Chris Whitty.
Yes. He is due to be honoured in the New Year's honour roll. I believe it's him and Emma Raducanu are the main names that are making the titles. Obviously, Emma's victory in the women's tennis is watched by plenty of people, admired by plenty of people. I'm sure I'll get some ire from the TalkSport colleagues down the hall, of where I'm a little bit like, should we really begin giving knighthoods to everyone for sporting stuff, especially considering how well they're paid? But I can really respect the girl's
19.
efforts.
Yes,
I know.
We were doing our A-levels when she's winning.
Well, she was doing her A-levels when she was winning it. She did a lot better than I did, I can tell you that.
and she won a US Open, so
okay, maybe I retract my. But Chris Whitty, really, I mean, as I said to some of your colleagues in the production booth, if anybody else was this bad at their job, they would be out on their backside sooner than split. But
so not deserved, you're saying?
No, but only in the government can you fail upwards. So he's going to be honoured for, I don't know, looking like some sort of shaved meerkat, I suppose.
This is not maybe a little bit unfair. He's been overseeing, obviously, our fight against the pandemic, our fight to get us to make sure many of us don't die in all of this, although we have reached figures of nearly 130,000 now when it comes to deaths. But no, not deserved at all.
Well, he seems to put us in a bit of a lockdown by stealth by scaremongering about social interactions. And I don't see why, especially considering he's unelected, he should have the same sort of authority as PMs or MPs that chair the COVID recovery group in getting up on stage every week and doing some sort of decree with his I suppose, fairly political and social leanings backed up by this nebulous term of the science. I mean, number one, the entire point of science is that you can continually challenge it and verify it, etc. And if he's making policies based on bunk data and his recommendations, well, also his SAGE colleagues aren't exactly the most reputable of people. Turns out, you know, what was her name? The Countdown presenter. Rachel Riley. So
yes,
she just won a lawsuit against one of Jeremy Corbyn's aides, and it was only for £10,000. But Jeremy Corbyn's aide is a very rich woman because her parents are one of the former writers of, I believe it was British Pravda, and Susan Michie, who sits on SAGE, which is a very convenient little thing. And Susan Michie is a lifelong member of the Communist Party. So if we've got advisors who are this sort of political bent, this sort of authoritarianism, advising our government, supposedly conservative government, on locking us all in our homes, it's not particularly a surprise that we've ended up in this total state.
Well, he didn't completely get his way over Christmas. You got the sense that Chris Whitty really wanted some further COVID restrictions introduced. That didn't happen. I was going to ask, how was your Christmas? Since in England it was
very nice actually. My grandparents came over. We always cook. I'm pretty notorious for my roast potatoes, if anyone's seen. Weirdly enough, my most popular tweet was just a photo of Spuds, so I feel like my career's gone down the wrong path.
What happened there?
I literally just tweeted out I'm the king of roast potatoes, and someone found it and retweeted it. Actually, it got posted on a very popular food-based Instagram account, and I wasn't credited for it, so I just DM'd the account saying, hey mate, this is mine, here's the tweet, do you mind giving me credit for it? And he went, yeah, no problem. And then my sister texted him and said, yeah, it's a family recipe. She did not contribute to it at all.
You need to share these potatoes. What makes them so good?
So it's you overboil, then you shake so you can fluff the outside so the starch goes to the outside. Preheat lots of sunflower oil. Then
sunflower oil?
Yes, it doesn't.
Not butter, not goose fat?
No, see, people like goose fat, but goose fat it has an exterior, it doesn't do like a shell. So like mine a bit like if you put mashed potato inside a prism of crisps.
Controversial.
And then if you put it face down in the hot sunflower oil, you do a little bit of cold on the top, and then by the time you flip it over, one side's crispy and you can go to the other side. About an hour and a half. Lovely.
Wait, okay, so the only difference of your roast potatoes is the sunflower oil?
That, also the timing and the overboiling. Most people don't boil to it's almost mash texture.
Yes.
And then you get the little crispy bits as well.
No seasoning?
That's after the fact. You've got to do salt and vinegar.
Okay. So actually, I mildly overcooked my potatoes yesterday, and they came out amazing. But yes, it was butter in the Van der Poy household. Okay,
yeah, no, we did a vat of goose fat and a vat of mine, so we could have a contrast. And mine did come out better. I'm just gonna be slightly smug about that one.
You know, these are fighting words, Connor. I need to test this to see if anything you're saying is backed up. Indeed. And who did you see? Did you get to big family members coming over?
It's just my parents, my sister and my grandparents. My missus spent it at her parents, and she was saying, I didn't eat until 8 o'clock, so what are you doing on Boxing Day? I'm rather bored, so I think she's coming over today if I'm still awake.
So late?
I have no idea, but they don't really do traditions. Like we do quite a lot. We do like the worst party game. The most common phrase heard in my house at Christmas is, I hate this game, because every year different game is picked and something always goes wrong. But it was quite a quiet one this year just because we cooked. My grandparents left for about 7. Everyone was in bed by 9. So.
Wow. Okay. So why do you think that was? Is that because you guys are just trying to play it safer, or I don't know? Because I have to say it was quite quiet in my house as well. I think there was so much excitement over the lead up to Christmas, and so much excitement that we could have just a few more people coming round, that actually on the day we were exhausted.
Yeah, I think there is a collective exhaustion. There's been this year's just flown by because something major has happened at least once a week, and so being caught up in the news cycle, it drains you like no tomorrow. I was very fortunate in that, so I quickly had a getaway down to Canterbury for a few days right before Christmas with and we went to Christmas markets, did our shopping and that, so I feel in the Christmas mood, but it's just when it hits you on the day, as a sort of natural introvert, I get absolutely shattered from socialising, and so it got to one point where I felt like a dog when you bring kids in the room. I just skulked off to another bedroom and I curled up and had to lay down. So yeah.
And your grandparents leaving? Did you say at 7?
Yeah, they live. Yeah.
Is that again to be cautious?
No.
Are they worried about restrictions?
No, they were
COVID?
just tired and had to go home and feed the dog. I mean, so the only thing we did is my mum asked us to do a lateral flow test, which I won't. Despite the false positives rates, I will acquiesce to, because my grandparents, obviously you don't want to give it to them anyway. If you've got it, you don't want. I mean, obviously don't have it because I'm sitting here. Hello. But the thing is, look, my dad and I aren't jabbed. My mum and sister and my grandparents are, because they're either immunocompromised or they work in a school, and we all just mixed and didn't care. And that's the main spirit of Christmas. That's why the sort of division between those who aren't vaccinated and those who are is completely nonsensical, particularly at this time of family gathering.
So when your mum did ask you to do the lateral flow, you did it. Did you also explain to her, though, that it means nothing? In terms of that's what you think. How does that conversation go?
Well, they live with me, so they hear this all the time. Okay, and they're pretty much they're very much on board with me. I mean, at the start they backed lockdown as a sort of a measure, and then over time, even it's gotten to the point where like even my cab drivers now, whenever I'm in there, they go, "Well, what's this nonsense?" Because I've heard this, and this. I think generally the British public is so exhausted with it, and they've got alternative media like talkRADIO to actually listen to more of the facts on the ground and a more balanced view. So more people are going, "Oh yeah, you know what? I don't actually believe in all of the edicts brought up by the Chris Whitty types, and this is some more counter evidence." So I think they're slowly tolerating living with me a little bit more, even though I kick a bit of fuss.
How do your grandparents feel then, at that grandparent kind of age, about more restrictions or potential more restrictions?
Oh well, so okay. The only person in my family that is not pro-restriction, but reluctantly accept it would be my nan. Okay. But she treats politics like football teams. My nan's not very politically involved, but she's like, I voted Labour when I was 19, so I'll still vote Labour now, even though they're completely different. My granddad can stand the government even less than I could, and would say things that would not be allowed on radio about what to do to depose them. But he doesn't care, genuinely. And at this point, they're church going, etc. And they said, look, we've had 2 years of we've had friends and family die that we never got to see again at mass. We've had people who are trying to do conversions into Catholicism, who are trying to do charity work that just haven't been able to attend. We've had to do things over Zoom, and my eyes are tired because I've got bad eyesight and that. At this point, if we've had 3 jabs, we test occasionally. If there's nothing more you can do, okay, what point do you learn to live with it? And they're happy to just get on with their lives.
And any plans for New Year's?
We will see if Boris decides to tyrannise us, though the mood is not going that way. I suspect it's because Labour, now they've got vaccine passports, have said we wouldn't vote for it. So Boris is afraid of a defeat in the Commons. If it happens, I mean, my family don't normally celebrate New Year's, but apparently this year I'm being dragged out by my friends and girlfriends, so I'm being forced to socialise. Lots of booze involved, I'm sure.
Well, Connor, lovely seeing you for the Christmas period, and have a lovely New Year's. That's Connor Tomlinson from UK Young Voices UK.